okay, bring me the epidural. I have never cried so hard in my entire life.
It was intense.
God just proved his faithfulness in such a mighty way. Oh shoot, I'm gonna get emotional. Hello beautiful people, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my labor and delivery story with my very first little baby here. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. So before I start telling this, I just want to preface really quickly that this might be a little bit of a longer video, just because for me personally, I really want to share all the details with you guys and to have this on video to be able to look back on someday and just remember all the special moments that went into the day of her birth. And so I just want to just preface that. So if it's a bit of a longer video, just hold tight. There's all kinds of amazing little details that I don't want to leave out. So I just want to say that really quickly. So let's just get right to it. So we were in a really interesting situation the week that I went into labor, or should I say the week leading up to labor. First of all, I was due the 22nd, she was born the 28th. So I went over 40 weeks, I was almost 41 weeks. But on top of all of that, the week that I went into labor, my husband and I got COVID. And so we were actually already quarantining the week that I went into labor, so I should say that it started like the week before. So we were already like halfway through our quarantine by the time this all happened, but that was the situation. And I just want to say that probably my one and only fear this entire pregnancy was that somehow, some way, one of us or both of us would end up getting COVID and Christian wouldn't be able to come and be with me when I went into labor. And so you can probably imagine how I was feeling the day that we found out. It was one of the hardest weeks mentally that I have ever gone through. But to say all of that, this experience taught me so much about trusting God and just how good he is and how faithful he is and how close he is in times of trouble. And so the day that we found out that we both had COVID, we just had this peace that came over us that we knew was from the Holy Spirit. And even though every part of our situation showed us that it might not work out the way that we want, we had this peace and that the Holy Spirit gave to us, and we knew that everything was going to be okay. So with all that being said, let's skip ahead. The week that I went into labor, we were quarantining and just staying away from everybody, and I was just really struggling mentally just because, like I said, I didn't know what the outcome would be. I didn't know if they would let him be with me in labor, and that thought just scared me so much because, like, this is my first baby. I didn't know what I was going into. I didn't know what I was about to experience, and the thought of not having him with me was absolutely crushing to me. And so the day that I went into labor, I'm going to be honest, I didn't want to be in labor just because I didn't know how the situation was going to pan out. So come March 27th, around 4 p.m., I started getting intense cramps, and I just thought, I've experienced these before. Maybe they're just Braxton Hicks. Maybe I'm just imagining things. Maybe I just have to go to the bathroom. But I started timing them out on my own. And at first I didn't tell Christian because, like I said, I didn't want it to be real, just because things were just really hard that week. I just was in a weird headspace, and I just could only focus on the fact that my husband might potentially not be able to come with me when I have this baby. And so I was timing them out, and for about a half hour, they were consistent, and I was just like dreading it. And so I eventually told Christian, probably about like 30 minutes into timing them out, we were watching Friends. I told him, I think that I'm having contractions. I think this might be it. And so we started to treat it like it was labor. He started doing counter pressure on my back and everything. And after probably about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour of consistent contractions, I called my sister because she lives right next door, and she's had 3 children now of her own. And so I sent her screenshots of my timed out contractions, and she's like, yeah, this is real. You're going into labor. And so in that moment, I was just really unsure of what to do because I didn't want to call them because of the fact that they might say that he can't come, but I knew that I had to do something because otherwise I was going to have the baby in the living room, which at that point I almost wanted to, just because I wanted my husband to be there. So I called my OB, And the nurse that picked up, I explained to her the situation. I said, is there any possible way that my husband can come with me? We will do whatever we need to do. Like, we've been quarantining together. Like, please, is there anything that can be done? And so she said, I don't know if the situation will change, but I'll ask the on-call nurse and I will call you back. And so as soon as she hung up that phone, we just started praying like there's no tomorrow. We were just praying so hard that they would look upon us with favor. And my sister was praying next door. We were all just like praying so hard in those moments that he would be able to come. And so probably about 20 to 30 minutes later, I got a call back, and the lady sounded really stern, but she said this. She said, okay, your husband can come with you. And from that moment on, all I heard was that. But she said, your husband can come with you. He has to wear a mask at all times. And if he takes it off for even a second, we will escort him out of the building. You guys will be escorted in separately. You'll have to be in a different room from the regular labor units, and you'll have to be quarantined and all that kind of stuff. And I said, absolutely yes, we will do whatever you need us to do. Thank you so, so much. And as soon as I hung up the phone, guys, I have never cried so hard in my entire life. I was crying and laughing at the same time because I was so excited that he got to come. Like, in that moment, I told myself the entire experience from this point forward could just be completely awful, and it won't even matter because my husband gets to be there with me, because we're a team and we do everything together. And so I was so relieved, and I just hugged Christian and we were just crying and I was laughing and I was just so excited, and I was finally like, okay, let's do this. I'm ready to go. And so we were packing up the car with all the bags and stuff like that, and we were just over the moon. And so skip forward to a little bit later, we were driving to the hospital. It was about a 30-minute drive, and my contractions were getting really close together and they were getting even more intense. And so part of me was kind of nervous that we weren't going to make it, because by the time we got there, my contractions were about 2 to 3 minutes apart and it getting very intense, like to the point where when they wheeled me up, I had to like stand up out of the wheelchair and just stand over. And when we were walking into the emergency room entrance, we had to stop, and the guy near the ambulance was like, is she okay? And he's like, yep, she's just having a contraction. And so we got there, we got checked in, we were in the waiting room, and I was like, we need to get this thing going. But everybody was so calm, which was definitely good for me because I needed that. But finally, after 30 minutes of waiting in the waiting room, we got escorted into a triage room. And they were like, okay, get a gown on. We'll be back in a little bit to check you to see if you're really in labor. And so at that point, I was like, okay, we're doing this. I knew without a shadow of doubt that I was in labor. But at that point, I had to just kind of lay still on a bed while they had like one of those heart monitors strapped to me. And I just kind of wanted to be up and moving at that point because I was still kind of trying to feel out the contractions. And when you're sitting still, it's not the most comfortable situation. So finally they came in, they checked me. Sure enough, I was 6 centimeters dilated, and I was like, thank the Lord, I don't have to go home. Like, this is the real deal. We're having a baby today. Like, we are going home with a baby. And so they wheeled us into a labor ICU room, which was different from the normal labor rooms because of our situation and us having to be quarantined and them having to treat it like a little bit differently. But I wasn't complaining because the room was absolutely huge and it was awesome. And we just had a very small nursing team that was helping us out, which was kind of cool and intimate as well. And obviously they were all garbed up and everything, but we were getting into it. And at that moment, our nurse who was there was asking me what I wanted at the time. And I said, I want a yoga ball. I want to sit down for a little bit. And then things just started to go full speed ahead. But I just want to say the staff was amazing. They were so lovely. The girl who was with us a majority of the time for my labor was so sweet. She sat on the floor for 45 minutes holding the heart monitor against my belly so that I could sit on a yoga ball and be moving around. So I just want to say that they were absolutely amazing, so sweet, and so accommodating for our situation. I was afraid that they might be a little mean because, we had COVID and all that, but they were so sweet, so accommodating, and it was just a beautiful experience. And so things started to get really intense. I felt like I wasn't getting much of a break between contractions. And so after a while, I just said, I want to lay in bed. I don't really feel much like moving around anymore. And we just kind of continued to labor it out. My husband was so great. He was right there with me the whole time, holding my hand, encouraging me. And finally, probably around, I want to say, I don't know, at this point it was probably close to like 11 o'clock or midnight or something like that. It just went by so fast, guys. I got in there probably at like 8:30 at night and she was born at 2:20 a.m. So things just like went full speed ahead. And so probably around 11:30, midnight-ish, I was like, okay, I am feeling a lot of pressure down there. I'm feeling the need to push. And so at that point, they brought in a nurse to come and check me. And sure enough, I was 8 centimeters dilated, which wasn't quite ready to push yet. But when I heard that, it should have been very encouraging to me because, you know, it would mean that I'm not very far from having the baby. But at the time, it was very almost discouraging to me because I was like, I thought it was time. I thought I was ready to push. I can't imagine how much longer this is going to be. And at the time, I really didn't know how much longer it would be for me to get from 8 to 10 centimeters. So at that point, I said, okay, bring me the epidural. I originally wasn't planning on getting an epidural just because there's just this weird stereotype that, you know, you're stronger if you don't get one and all this. And so I just was determined to not get one. But guys, at the end of the day, like, that doesn't matter. You are a strong woman for having a baby, for taking care of a baby, for raising a baby, and no one should make you feel less than that because you get an epidural. And so I asked for the epidural, and at the time I was like, I'm so sorry, all this stuff. I was apologizing to my husband because I was like, I was determined not to get one, and he's like, why are you saying sorry to me right now? You of all people, you are the last person right now that needs to be apologizing for this. So he was really sweet about it. He's like, whatever you want to do. And so I said, yep, I want the epidural. And so from that point on to me getting the epidural, it's probably only about like 15 minutes till they got there, but it honestly felt like an eternity. And between every contraction, I was just like, where are they? They said they would be here. And Christian's like, I promise they're coming soon. But about 15 minutes later, they arrived to give me the epidural, and you need to sit up for the procedure and be very still. And so as soon as I sat up in the bed, I was like, got just so nauseous, and I said, I'm gonna throw up. I need a bag right now. So the nurse ran and got a bag, and she made it back just in time. And this was probably the most intense part of the labor for Christian. This part kind of really freaked him out, but I wouldn't know because I was just like in the zone. But as soon as I started to throw up, because there was so much pressure from me throwing up, my water broke at the same time. So there was just a big mess going on, but the people were great. They cleaned everything up, and I was able to get the epidural. It definitely was intense having to sit there hunched over really still and trying to be as still as you can for her to put it in, but also going through these really intense contractions. And so, mamas, you guys are warriors. It was nothing like I'd ever imagined. But like I said, at the end of the day, I don't want this to scare any of you guys out there from having kids. It was the best experience ever, but it was very, very intense. That's what I will say. It was very intense, but so worth it. But anyways, got the epidural, and I laid back, and I was like, okay, we're just gonna wait this thing out. They dimmed the lights, which was fantastic, and I will definitely be doing that again when I have another baby, because it was just so peaceful. We put on some instrumental worship music just because I didn't want a ton of words. I just wanted that just light sound of just the instrumental worship music, and we just waited. And guys, it did not take long. The epidural kicked in at the perfect time, the absolute perfect time, and about like 15 minutes later, she was born. It was like 15 to 30 minutes later, she was born. And so as soon as it kicked in, things started to feel all warm and tingly down there, and my legs started to go kind of numb. But to be completely honest, that was probably one of the best parts of the entire experience, because instead of focusing on the pain in that time, I was able to focus on the pushing aspect, which was perfect, because if I was just being able to focus on the pain, I feel like I probably wouldn't have enjoyed the experience as much. And so the nurse came in who was going to deliver the baby, the doctor came in who was going to deliver the baby, and she was so sweet. And she's like, all right, you're 10 centimeters. We're going to start pushing. And that is when it just gets so surreal that like you're about to meet your baby at any moment. And you almost just get this like new surge of adrenaline because you're like, let's do this. I'm ready. I'm determined. And so one nurse was on one leg, one nurse was on the other, and Christian was right there. And 9 minutes later, she was out. She was in the world. I had probably about like 5 rounds of pushing, 3 pushes each, and she was out into the world. They were super impressed that I got her out so quickly. But what can I say? I was just really determined to meet my little girl, and I was just like, let's do this. That was probably my favorite part of the entire labor because you just feel like you're doing something and you're just right there in the end of it. And so 9 minutes later, 2:20 a.m., March 28th, this little girl came into the world, and they put her right on my chest, and I immediately started crying, and I looked up and Christian was crying as well. And it was just a moment that I will absolutely never forget. I will never forget it. Even though I was shaking like crazy from all the adrenaline and everything, I will never forget the moment when they placed her in my arms and I heard her start crying. Oh shoot, I'm gonna get emotional. It was just, there's nothing like that moment whenever your baby is born. I was in labor for about 10 and a half hours total, and then she was here. And so that was my labor experience. Like I said, the staff was so incredible. And to be completely honest, even though our situation was not what we had imagined, like having COVID and having to be quarantined away from, you know, everybody and all that kind of stuff, it was such a beautiful experience, and there was so much peace in it, and was exactly what we needed at the time. And so she was born to an instrumental song called God's Times, I think that's what it was, or God's Timing, something like that, which was just such a good reminder that everything happens in His perfect timing. And even though it is absolutely nothing like we ever imagined it would be, it was just absolutely perfect. And it was just the most beautiful experience, and I'm just so grateful for it. And so that was my labor and delivery story. I probably left a few things out, so if you guys have any questions, just please put them in the comment section below. I would be more than happy to answer them. But I was just so excited to share this with you guys. I just really wanted to have it recorded for my sake, and also to just share this with you guys as well, because it was just completely different than we imagined, but it was absolutely perfect in every single way. And so thank you guys for tuning in, and let's get on to the encouragement and prayer portion of the video. All right, so really quickly, before we get to the encouragement and prayer portion of the video, I just wanted to include a short little segment with my husband here, because he was also a part of the birth experience, obviously. Do like our little matching thingies.
Hello to my sister. She got a fourth. So.
Anyway, but in like 2 minutes or less, if you could describe the experience, or like your thoughts on the experience of childbirth, of her birth story, what would it be?
It was intense. It was intense, you know what I mean, for the guys' side of things, for the men out there, the husbands that are going to experience their wives giving birth and in the birthing room. It's intense, you know, it's really intense. You gotta stick with them. You gotta keep encouraging them.
What did you think of it?
It was a lot. It was a lot for me, because it's a lot for me when like you're in pain, you know, and so like because of that, seeing you like in pain, and then like there was a moment, I mean, you probably explained when you threw up and stuff like that. Like there was a moment when like you threw up, and then like the doctors were right there, and I just kind of sat there. I was like, what am I supposed to do?
Well, what would you say were like,
and so it was kind of like, it was intense. The coolest moments were obviously when she was born. I was in tears, crying for like an hour. What's
something that like you'll never forget about
something I'll never forget? Honestly, just how like fast the whole process goes. It's actually like, you know, like you hear labor stories. Oh, I was in labor for 28 hours, blah, blah, blah. Like you hear their stories and stuff all the time, but like honestly, like the time flies so much. And then like when it's time to like push and get the baby out, like you're just there and you're just ready to support, and you just never forget kind of like that feeling of, you know, both being involved in something so, you know, amazing.
Is it like you thought it would be?
I mean, I didn't know what to think because I never experienced it before. So it was probably a lot more intense than I thought it would be.
Cool.
But it was good. It was good. It was a cool experience.
I was proud of you. You did great.
Yeah. I probably said breathe like a million times.
Yeah, but it's okay. I needed the reminder. But anyways, that was his perspective on the whole situation. He's just been super sweet about the whole thing, and he was an amazing person to have in the room with me.
Sorry.
Just kill all the son of Anyways, I love you, and thanks for being part of the video. Get to the encouragement and prayer portion. All right, so for today's encouragement and prayer, I just want to encourage you guys that God is so faithful. Like I said, throughout that entire experience of the week leading up to my labor and the day of, God just proved his faithfulness in such a mighty way. And the thing was, you know, a lot of times when we say, oh, God is so faithful, it's because like we see the results right away. But in that week leading up, like I said, it was one of the hardest weeks for me mentally that I've ever experienced. And so no part about it was easy, but it was so worth it, because in those moments, I would spend the early mornings in prayer, in worship, just pressing in to the Lord's presence on my knees, crying out to the Lord and sharing with him how I felt, sharing with him my heart. And it just brought me so close to him, and almost in a way just prepared me spiritually for the experience of giving birth. I just look back on it now, and he was there the whole time, the absolute whole time. It wasn't just the day that we got the call that Christian would be able to be with me. It wasn't just in the moments when I was delivering her. He was there the whole time, and he is just so faithful to his word. And so I just want to encourage you guys with that today, that if you are just waiting for something, and if you are a woman who is about to go into labor, just lean into him and trust that he is faithful, and that you will see his faithfulness come to pass in your situation and in your life in many ways, shapes, and forms. It was never like I imagined that it would be. It didn't pan out the way that I imagined his faithfulness would pan out, but it panned out in the way that it needed to. And because of that, it was just such a growing experience, and it just built my trust so much deeper. It made my roots be planted in him so much deeper. And so I just wanted to encourage you guys with that today. And I just want to pray with you that if you're going through that situation, or if you're a mama who is about to have a baby, I just want to pray for you guys. So if you could bow your heads with me, that would be amazing. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this day. I thank you for your faithfulness. I thank you for this beautiful baby girl, and just for this story that I get to tell, that is not just a story of my labor and delivery, but it is a testimony of your goodness, of your faithfulness, and of your love for us. God, I just pray right now that if those watching are in a situation where they need to see your faithfulness, I just pray that you would just remind them that you are there, that they would be given new ways to press into you, to press into your word, to just be honest and open with you, and to just learn what it means to just trust you and be in your presence. And Lord, I just pray for all the mamas out there right now, those who have kiddos, those who are waiting for kiddos, and those who are about to have a baby. I just pray right now for just supernatural labor experience, supernatural childbirth experience. I pray that they would be filled with your peace, and that even if the situation doesn't turn out the way that they imagine that it would be, that everything would happen the way that it's supposed to. And Lord, I just pray just for protection over their hearts, protection over their labor experiences, that the enemy may not have any hand whatsoever in them, and that it would just be a beautiful experience overall. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, you can always feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to continue to receive encouragement and prayer, you can always subscribe to my channel down below as well. But anyways, I love you guys so much. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye! Thank you.
Yep.
Hi. Do you want to say hi? Hey, we're talking about you, huh? We're talking about how you came into this world. Look at those cutie cats.